My wife and I first crossed paths when I was 20 and she was 18. She was my first in all intimate relationships, although by that time she already had some experience. We both went to college. I went to one college, she went to another, and we were dating all the time, living apart. I lived with my parents, and she lived with hers. In 2004, her grandfather passed away, and by 2005 I began to spend more time with her. Over time, we gradually began to live together in a two-bedroom apartment, just the two of us in one room, while her grandmother lived in the other. In 2008, Zara told me she was pregnant. I wasn't exactly prepared for it, but I didn't mind at all. We figured we should get married, and so we did. In 2009, our daughter was born. Around that time, we had to face the apartment situation. My parents lived in a three-bedroom place. My mother-in-law had a three-bedroom apartment with her new husband, and the apartment my wife and I had been sharing was owned by her uncle. The whole situation was a bit of a tangled mess. Zara told me she wouldn't leave the grandmother who'd raised her, so we needed to stay with her. I agreed, although now, looking back, I realize we could have swapped two of the three-bedroom apartments for something more separate. But what's done is done. For years now, my wife hasn't worked. At first, I wasn't bothered by it. But over time, I started suggesting, gently, that she might consider working. Not for the money, but just to expand her horizons or something. But she always said that if she worked, she wouldn't be able to give me as much attention or devote enough time to the child. She also doubted whether I'd help out with housework. Then my mother-in-law fell ill, and my wife started saying she couldn't work because she needed to take care of her mom. For the last 3 years, we've had a lot of arguments, but despite everything, I always thought of her as the most important person in my life. I tried to smooth things over, believing that no matter what happened, we'd been together since we were kids, and we'd grow old together too. But that wasn't how it turned out. Last year, my mother-in-law passed away. After the funeral, when everyone had gone to bed, I ended up opening my wife's phone and found an intimate conversation. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought maybe it was a joke or some kind of mistake. But no, it was all there, clear as day. I drank and thought about it for 3 days before I finally decided to confront her. I asked if she was ashamed, and she said, no. Apparently, I'd been so awful to her that, according to her, her cheating was almost expected. Needless to say, I was stunned by that response. I asked what we were going to do next, and she said she loved me and didn't want me to leave. After all, we'd been together for half our lives, and she had no one closer than me. She promised she'd end things with her lover. She said she would talk to him and make it clear that their relationship was over. And here's the kicker. This affair had been going on for at least 1.5 years. A couple of days later, she told me that she had broken up with this guy. She and her lover agreed that family is more important than anything in the world. After all, he also had a wife and a small child. A few more days passed, and I invited her to a restaurant. We had a drink, went for a nice walk, and had sex. It was a pleasant evening. But when I looked through her phone that evening, I saw that she had sent a selfie to her lover as we were returning home from the restaurant. There was also a small exchange between them. I told her that's not how people rebuild their relationships. She claimed that it was just a photograph, and that after 1.5 years it was impossible to simply erase someone from your life. That led to a huge argument. I packed up and went to my parents. She cried, begged me not to leave, said that she would never leave me for anything. No matter what, we haven't talked, but we have a daughter together. We started chatting a little bit, but only on the topic of my daughter. About a week later, I realized that I was missing intimacy. Our intimate life was quite regular. I told my wife about it. She wrote that, in principle, she doesn't mind that I come and stay whenever I want. Well, I began to come like that, sometimes for a day, then for a couple. I told her right away that I would not return. I would come solely for the sake of intimacy. We periodically have conversations with her about her infidelity, But I do not hear words of apology for her act, just that she couldn't leave me. But I could. Many people will ask if I cheated. To be honest, in 2007, I went on a business trip, and colleagues ordered call girls. Alcohol did its job. I decided to try it. After that, I was terribly tormented by remorse for several more years. After this incident, I decided never to cheat. She wasn't my wife then, and I never cheated on her again. Last November, after I found out about her cheating, I went on a business trip. That's where I had several affairs with different girls. I decided that I am now a free man and I can afford it. Right? I called my wife again and asked for sex. I can't give it up with her. That's how I live. When I visit her, I try to forget everything that happened. It's getting harder for me to look at her every time. It seems that there is nothing between us anymore, except some memories, dust, and ruins. Everything inside me is protesting. But I can't refuse. It's like I've fallen back into the same trap that I once seemed to have freed myself from. I feel like I can't live like this. For a long time, I could not understand why I was returning, but over time I realized that I was looking for something comforting in these short meetings, even if it gives nothing but pain and emptiness. My wife and I are like two long-abandoned houses in which you can still find some surviving pieces of furniture, but in general this is no longer the place to return to. But I come back, and every time it's like I'm betraying myself again. Maybe I'm looking for forgiveness, or on the contrary, do I want her to admit that everything is not so clear, that I am also not without sin? But when we meet, things get even more confusing, as if she wants to hide the truth from me and from herself. Lately, I've been wondering if maybe this whole situation is like an addiction. I've never liked the word addiction, though. It always feels like it implies weakness. But there's definitely something to it. We can't seem to break free from these ties, because we're both afraid of being alone. She's scared of losing me, and I'm scared of losing her, even though I know that this toxic dependence we have on each other isn't doing either of us any good. Sometimes I tell myself that if we keep going like this, things might improve somehow. Maybe we'll figure out a new way to live together. But deep down, I know I'm just fooling myself. I'm avoiding the truth that we've been heading in different directions for a long time. And if I don't do something about it, I'll just sit back and watch our lives fall apart. I think I get it now. I know what's wrong. The truth is, we need to end things. I know she's still talking to her lover, and they're still sleeping together. Yet she wants me to come back to the family. But now I'm thinking of telling her everything. On one hand, I don't want to destroy another family or ruin someone else's life. But on the other hand, I know that, sooner or later, the truth will come out.